So, I actually already filmed and edited this entire video, and I was like, wow, I'm doing amazing, go me. But I realized as I was editing my video, I needed to include a final product shot, and I was like, oh, I need to wet and block my garment. So I did that as I was editing, and then I took a break from editing to try it on, and it looked like this. I was so incredibly frustrated learning how to use this knitting machine because I know how to knit traditionally by hand. And it was like, why can't I figure out this loom? And then once I did, it bit me in the ass because I forgot about all of the other general knitting and crocheting rules and just let me be your lesson. I've already preached about this before, so I don't know why I didn't take my own advice, but whatever. Learn from my mistakes. Definitely make a tension gauge. It's fine. I feel like I could have made the sweater work. It was just a little long on the body and the sleeves, which wasn't the end of the world, but it wasn't quite what I was going for. We're gonna figure out again. Here's the actual tutorial. First things first, let's talk about machine setup. I actually never use the panel setting, and I'm always making my panels in the tube setting because you can. And I recommend it because in the panel setting, you actually get this really hard stop that I think makes it easier for your stitches to fall off, particularly at the edges. So I recommend just doing everything in the tube setting. Additionally, you have a row counter right here. I never use this thing, I don't rely on it. I'll show you all how to count your number of rows. And then you have your tension gauge holder and then your yarn holder. I also highly recommend using the suction cups that come with the machine to actually adhere it to a surface. I was stubborn at first and I didn't use it and I thought I could get away with it, but putting the suction cups on and having it stay in one place actually really does help create more even stitches. And yeah, let's begin. So this off the shoulder sweater is worked in 6 panels. The front and the back panels are identical, and then you're going to have 2 panels, one for each sleeve. Those are going to be identical. And then you're going to have the off the shoulder portion, and those 2 panels are going to be identical. So the first portion that we're going to work on are the front and back panels. And for the front and back panels, I'm going to be casting on 41 pins and cranking about 80 rows. I am making this garment to measure and to fit me. If you are smaller than me, go ahead and use fewer pins, and if you are bigger than me, use more pins. However, the maximum amount of pins that you can use on this machine is 45. I think if you need a larger circumference for the torso, the front and back panel area, what you could do is create smaller panels for the sides and then seam them up together at the end. The first thing we're going to do is use some waste yarn, and using waste yarn helps create a more polished, clean edge at the end of your panels. If you like the ruffling effect, you don't have to cast on with waste yarn, but I do also recommend waste yarn if you're a beginner because you will probably drop some stitches in the first few rows, especially if you're not very experienced with this machine. So yeah, highly recommend using some waste yarn. So to cast on, we're going to leave ourselves a bit of a tail, and then we're going to hook the yarn under the pin and start cranking your handle. Now the yarn is going to skip over the second pin. It's going to skip over every other pin, but what you want to do instead is make sure that the yarn catches underneath these nooks/bumps. So for the front panel, I'm going to be casting on 41 pins. Okay, so I have casted on 41 pins, and then when you are at your last pin, make sure that the yarn wraps around that nook/bump. This is how you're going to prevent from your edge stitches from slipping off. And then go ahead and hook your yarn into the yarn holder. And then I put it in the closest tension slot. And then from here, you are going to crank a few rows out. I would suggest going pretty slowly in the beginning. So when we get to this last pin here, what I like to do actually is go one pin extra to the right, and then when you get to the other side, one pin extra to the left, because I find that that sort of rhythm helps to catch the yarn underneath these bumps, nooks that I was talking about. And hold your yarn too to keep it taut. Your yarn at the end here might catch, so make sure it just slips down. And then here too, make sure that you can kind of like pull down your tail. You won't have to pay super close attention to the edges once you really get going, but it's just the first few rows that you want to be a bit more cautious with. I think that's enough rows for now. So now take your actual project yarn, leave yourself a bit of a tail, and then go ahead and hook it in to your yarn holder and the tension gauge holder thingy, and then just start cranking. So I've cranked out a few rows with my project yarn, and here is where I want to show you all how I count my stitches. I don't know if this is like completely accurate or anything, but I found that it works for me. You have these columns of smiley faces and frowny faces. You're going to find a column of frowny faces and then start counting up the column. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that is how I count my rows. I am going to go ahead and go make the front and back panels. Okay, so I have now worked about 80 rows with my project yarn, and I'm going to go ahead and snip off the excess. And then I'm gonna go ahead with more waste yarn and cast off. So to cast off, you're really just gonna crank a few rows with your waste yarn. Okay, so now to actually take it off of the machine, I'm gonna go ahead and unhook all of the yarn from the yarn holder and like the tension gauge holder. Kind of put it in the middle here, and then go ahead and crank around your work twice. So that was one, and you'll see on the second time that all of your stitches will just fall right off. All right, and now you have knitted a panel. Now that we have knitted our actual panel, we need to secure the edges, and this method of securing is actually what leads to a much cleaner, flatter laying edge. So what you're gonna do is take a crochet hook. I recommend using like a size 4 or size 5 hook. We're going to be doing a slip stitch seam all along the edges. All you have to remember is to do it very, very loosely. Make a slip knot. And then once you've made your slip knot, go ahead and put it on your hook. And then here at the edge of your actual project yarn and your waste yarn, you're gonna see that first row of bumps where your actual work start. Go ahead and slide your hook into the first bump on the row underneath there. Yarn over, and then pull your hook through. You've just now made one slip seam. So go ahead and make that slip stitch seam, ensuring that you have a fairly loose tension. And then I usually also like to make an additional yarn over and then pull through. This yarn is also from the first iteration of the sweater, which is why it's super short, but bear with me. Now we have one secured edge, and I'll be right back securing the other edge. So now both of my edges are secured. The last thing I want to show you before I just go ahead and make all of my panels, because, oh, hair. The process is going to be the exact same. The measurements and like how many pins and how many rows you crank are just going to be slightly different. But now you might be wondering, how are you supposed to take off the waste yarn? You can just cut it up, honestly. But if you, like me, want to continue reusing your waste yarn, this is how you take it off. You have a cast on edge of waste yarn, and then you have a cast off edge of waste yarn. For the cast off edge, all you're really gonna do is find your yarn where you cast it off from, and then just go ahead and start pulling. And the yarn comes off super easily, and you're left with a really nice, clean edge. But for the cast on edge, and then on the very last stitch of your waste yarn, you're going to start tugging at this final stitch on the top here, and you're gonna find that if you feel where the two parts meet, there's something inside there. If you start pulling at one end, you'll start feeling where the yarn connects the two different panels, and you can just start pulling this straight out. And then once you've pulled it all the way out, it just detaches, and you are yet again left with a nice clean edge. Okay, I am not gonna repeat my same mistakes. I'm gonna go wet and block this out while I make all the other panels. So I'm going to make my sleeve panels and my off the shoulder portion panels. For each sleeve, I'm going to be casting on 35 stitches and then cranking about 85 rows. And then for the off shoulder panel portion, I'm going to be casting on 45 pins, so the entirety of the loom, by 36-ish, 35-ish rows. I really need to make a coffee before I do this because it's really early and I'm really tired. But we should be able to crank this out pretty quickly. So this is my finished sleeve panel, and all I'm gonna do is flip it inside out so that the bumps are facing upwards, and I'm going to slip stitch seam these two edges together. So to do that, I am going to make a slip knot. So again, go under that V shape, that braid that you see, and then the corresponding stitch on the other side. Yarn over, and then pull it through. So now we are going to seam up the sides of our front and back panel together, but what we're also going to do is attach our sleeves at the very top here. So because I cast it on about 35 pins, I'm gonna leave myself like 17-ish stitches on both sides of the panel at the very top so that I can seam my sleeve panel with my front and back panels. Until that point, I'm just gonna do a slip stitch seam as I've been doing with everything else. So now I have seamed up one of my sides for the front and back panel, and I'm ready to attach my sleeve. So I've left myself about 17-ish stitches on either panel. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna first decide which side of my sleeve I want to seam on. Generally, I just kind of stretch it out, and I see that one edge is a bit stretchier than the other. So honestly, I'm going to make the stretchier edge the end of my sleeve, and then attach at the tighter end, just because I want a slightly more flared effect for the sleeve rather than a super tight fit. But again, totally up to you. This edge you're going to attach to this panel. Basically, you want to leave yourself a little armhole here, but go ahead and slip stitch seam the sleeve on. These are my off the shoulder portion panels, and same thing, so I'm going to turn them inside out, and then go ahead and seam the edges right here on the side using the same slip stitch seam. And then this panel, once it's like all attached, so it's like a big circle, is going to be attached to the top of our sweater. Okay, so exciting. We are almost done. The arms are all attached, and the last thing that we have to do is attach our off the shoulder portion to the rest of our sweater. So to do that, I'm gonna layer it on top like this. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and slip stitch seam it together with the right side facing up. I found that the slip stitch seam kind of leaves you with a nice braid on top, and it's not super visible, so I didn't think it was a big deal. If you don't want the seam for whatever reason, you can go ahead and flip it inside out. Additionally, I've already made this sweater before, so I actually really like how the waist yarn looks with this color, and so I want to add just a little detail, a little pop of color, and to do so, I'm just going to slip stitch seam this very edge of my off-shoulder panel. But when I'm done, I will be right back. She's done! And I won't lie to you, I think if you were to put an elastic here, you would get a bit more stretch than what I did, which was just slip stitch seaming some pink on there. Because I'll be honest, I can't move my arms very much, I'm flapping. However, I discovered this hack. We'll call it a hack. If you go like this, it'll like fold the bottom edge in, and then so it'll kind of just be like a normal, you know, off-shoulder top, slightly smaller panel, and it has this like really nice like folded over effect, and I can like actually use my arms this way. However, for the aesthetic, you know, we do the under boob. Ooh. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It was such a nightmare to film and edit 2 times. But yeah, I hope you guys have a lot of fun making this. I really want to see pictures. I love seeing pictures from you guys recreating my tutorials and my patterns. Yeah, like, thank you so much for the support. I appreciate every single one of you guys. Thanks for coming along the ride. Yeah, go make your own off-shoulder tops and let's all just be hot girls who knit and crochet. Or hot theys, or hot gays, I don't know. Whoever, all of us, everyone's welcome. I hope you are having a very good day, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.